Okay. So I hope you had a chance to go around campus. Please do. At least we have got you here at a time when the weather is quite nice. That's really our only drawback, the heat. Other than that, everything is perfect. Well, not perfect, but pretty good. Okay, so we will have welcome to the ACM IIT Gandhinagar IKDD summer school. It's going to be an intense summer school. It's not going to be just sitting in, right? And it's going to be, if you count the number of hours that we have and the amount of content that you're going to be exposed to, it's more than what you would see in a typical semester for a machine learning course, more than that, right? Oh, welcome everybody. And all of that you will go through. We will do a lot of problems, right? And you will go through that through a variety of teachers. So that is one more thing that you have to be careful about in terms of the attendance, right? Because if you miss a class, right, it's going to be very hard for you to pick up. It's not going to be easy for you to catch up, right? Because the teachers are going to change. The teacher, even if it's the same teacher, he or she is going to talk about a different topic, right? And it's not going to be easy, right? And we do hope that we will try to make it as amenable as we can. We will, I mean, all the teachers are from excellent places. They have a lot of experience in dealing with students, and of course from the industry and academia, very top places. So it will be an interesting experience, right? A bumpy, but an interesting experience. Okay. So what do we expect? What do you want to get out of the summer school? So first of all, let me tell you things that you will not do, right? So, I mean, if you go to Bangalore today, you see sort of, I should have taken one of these pictures. You see pictures on these autos even, right? I was taking an auto in Bangalore that says, oh, become a data scientist in 10 days. Become a data scientist without knowing coding, without knowing mathematics. Okay? We will not make you a data scientist in 10 days, right? Let me promise you that. So I think, let me define my pessimistic statement. Right. Has anybody run a marathon, long distance? Anybody? Yes. Okay. How long and how much did you train for? How long was the marathon, and how long was your training period in time? For 6 months. 42 kilometers, 6 months. Nice, very nice. So basically, you should compare it to that. What we will be doing here is that we will take you on a bumpy drive along the marathon course. Right? We will cover them a whole lot of course, right? A whole lot of material, but it will be a drive that you're on. It's not the marathon that you're running yourself. If you have to run the marathon yourself, you have to do that 6 months training, 6 months modulated to some number of years. Right? That stamina you have to build yourself. That's completely up to you. We cannot help you here, right? We are only giving you pointers. We're only giving you directions. Right? But building up the stamina in yourself, building up that fine expertise that I should try this, I should not try that, that's really up to you, right? Handling all the problems, looking at many different problems, only then you can solve the 1001. Okay, but with that sort of note of caution in mind, let me start the summer school formally. And our first speaker is Professor Nipun Batra, right? Who has been at IIT Gandhinagar for the last 4 years. 4 years. Okay, that is my guess. So, I mean, over to you. So he's going to tell you. So, Nipun, I request you to give your short intro. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm audible at the back? Good. So I'm a faculty here in the computer science department. I work on things like smart variables. I work on things like applied machine learning for sustainability problems. So things like energy management in buildings, things like estimating air pollution at places where we don't have sensors, building smart variables, things like building a mask which can estimate your lung health without additional cost, without significant cost. And I'm going to be talking about different facets of machine learning. Mostly, I'm going to be showing you some demonstration videos which have been picked up from the internet. So I want to give you a few takeaway messages, which I'll say now. I'll also repeat them throughout this lecture. One, when we think about machine learning, data science, we should not be just thinking in terms of the specific algorithms, the data, etc. We should be thinking in terms of the entire ecosystem, the whole system. Second, we should also be aware of the various implications of the technology that we're developing. So with that, I will start this talk. And as Anirban mentioned just a few minutes back, you're here at a very nice time. I don't know if many of you have just explored the campus. Right outside, if you just move about 50 steps this side, you'll see the Sabarmati River. So see that, see there are beautiful places on the campus. And ask questions, ask a lot of questions in this particular presentation at least. So when we talk about machine learning applications, we don't have to go very far. We can just look at our smartphones. This is a slightly older slide. So Windows Cortana on the phone. So Nokia plus Windows Phone, I believe, is not being continued any longer. But think of Apple Siri, Google Now, or the equivalent of Google Now and Windows Cortana. Think about the amount of things they do. You ask them questions. Who is the president of India? Who is the prime minister of India? Your speech gets converted into some text. That is a machine learning application. Your text is then searched on a very large database on the internet. You can think of that information retrieval machine learning in some sense. The result is returned. In many cases, you're now hearing a human voice, right? Which is also tailor-made now, right? So there are various aspects of this pipeline which are now built into your phone. And other applications also. So we see in this case, this thing like Siri app suggestions, similar to Google also can suggest which app you'll open next, right? So let me ask all of you, how do you think your phone or your machine learning system knows which app you're likely to use next? How do you think that is being figured out? And I'm not looking for very sophisticated solutions. I'm looking for simple answers. How do you think that? Yes. Okay. So the answer he's giving is that if you use certain applications in the past, you're also more likely to use them in the next few minutes, next time you open. What else could you use? Yes. Okay. Right. Okay, excellent. So we have already heard two different answers, right? So one is something which is personal to you, right? You open certain apps at certain points of time, let's say, right? So we can call this time-based context. The other is what pairs of apps are generally used together, right? What similar items are being used. So this is similar. This now depends on a larger database. This is not something specific to you. This is also general to a large number of users, right? Now think of, so the app suggestion might seem like a convoluted example, but let's look at something which all of us are much more used to looking at. How does Amazon Prime figure out which movies you're supposed to view next? How do you think that happens? If you like a certain genre of movies, you'll probably be recommended more of that genre. If people who like the movie you have liked, they'll also recommend you similar movies, right? And sometimes they also give you suggestions which you feel are crazy, right? So that's also to add some element of diversity. You're not always recommended the same set of movies, but you're also sometimes recommended similar, some slightly different movies. And similarly, these things happen when you are looking at Netflix, when you're looking at Amazon Books, you can in fact very clearly see that customers who bought this book also bought the following books, right? So these are some of the applications which are now very, very ingrained into our systems, right? We are so used to them that we don't even think about them now. Let's think of a very different application now. So with things opening up now, I believe some of you have now probably would have been to grocery stores, right? So how many of you go to grocery stores to buy something very trivial? Let's say just a toothbrush, right? And the person in front of you just wants to buy the whole home. They want to buy 50 items and you're just there waiting for your toothbrush to be built. Has anyone seen that? Sorry, was there a question? Right. So how many of you been in such situations? So it's not a very pleasant experience, right? How do you think we can solve that problem? Yes, excellent. So in some countries, you would have even seen this. So they call it 5 or less or 10 or less. If you have 5 or less items, you can directly go to those counters. It makes the queues quicker. Secondly, there are some self-checkout queues also. In certain parts of the world, you see those kind of queues. But let's say those are not available. Then what do you think you can do? I'm looking for answers. They may or may not be all machine learning based, very sophisticated. Right. So I believe some of us would have also been to doctors, right? We go to the doctor and there's another person in front, another patient in front of us. And we have already spoken to the doctor. We just request the other person, the person in front of us. I just need to go and pick up a medicine, right? So not a very sophisticated algorithm, but let's see what machine learning, computer vision, and such systems can do, right? So some of you might have already seen this video. It's from Amazon.
Four years ago, we started to wonder, what would shopping look like if you could walk into a store, grab what you want, and just go? What if we could weave the most advanced machine learning, computer vision, and AI into the very fabric of a store so you never have to wait in line? No lines, no checkouts, no registers. Welcome to Amazon Go. Use the Amazon Go app to enter. Then put away your phone and start shopping. It's really that simple. Take whatever you like. Anything you pick up is automatically added to your virtual cart. If you change your mind about that cupcake, just put it back. Our technology will update your virtual cart automatically. So, how does it work? We used computer vision, deep learning algorithms, and sensor fusion, much like you'd find in self-driving cars. We call it Just Walk Out technology. Once you've got everything you want, you can just go. When you leave, our Just Walk Out technology adds up your virtual cart and charges your Amazon account. Your receipt is sent straight to the app, and you can keep going. Amazon Go. No lines, no checkout. No, seriously.
Okay, that seems like a very cool technology. Now, I want you to think like thieves, right? How will you break this system? What will you do so that such technology doesn't work, or you're able to get more than what you actually pay? What do you think you want to do? I'm sorry, you were probably not expecting to be asked to think like thieves, but that's what the question is. Yes. Okay. 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 Right. I see. Okay. So that seems like an interesting answer. I think they would have perhaps they'll perhaps allow only those people to enter who scan their IDs. Like what you're telling is I'm not recalling the exact term, but that is what people do in metros also, right? By metro I mean the metro trains. If someone is going, you just tag along with them. Right? Yeah, perhaps that can work. I'm not sure, but other ways, other ingenious ways, yes. Okay. 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 So you're talking about authentication at the time you're entering the store, right? Okay. So that's perhaps one way to do. You're just forging the documents. You just, yes. Yeah, that's more like what I was thinking. Like that's more pro version of being a thief. But let's say if they have weight sensors also. So what he's suggesting is that let's say you take a can of strawberries, whatever, right? You take a can of strawberries, but you bring another can of strawberries from your home, which is empty. You take one and you put one back. You put the empty one back, right? But maybe they have sensors to detect the weight. So then you'll have to get precise weight measurements also. So that's next level of being a good thief. What else could we do? What about blind spots where the camera can't cover, right? You'll have certain things where the camera can't work, right? So there's another facet of machine learning called adversarial machine learning, where you're trying to fool the computer vision based system into thinking, into predicting something, into recognizing something which is actually wrong, right? So what happens there, we'll come to that in a few minutes. We have this image which the computer is trying to recognize. You add some noise to it, and the computer vision system thinks it's completely different. Right? You can fool that. So now, having thought about fooling the system, this technology otherwise looks cool. Let's say that we are able to mitigate all the solutions. Let's say if you're a store owner, do you think this is a good solution you'll want to employ at your company? If you have a factory or if you have a brand of stores, would you want to employ this at your company? How many think you'd want to employ this at your company? It reduces employee costs because the robot doesn't have to take leaves. The robot doesn't get infected with COVID, right? So there are various sort of upsides to it. But why would you not want to use such technology? Sorry? A high maintenance cost, that's perhaps questionable. So the initial investment is perhaps high, but then the employee cost in the long run is maybe higher. The machine doesn't have, let's say, you'd have to give LTC to the machine, right? Yes. What are the things? Why might you not want to do this? Right. Assume that you've built a perfect foolproof system. Then, okay, assume that the cost is also low, that you've developed an in-house, that some of you become very, very trained in machine learning systems. You're able to build such technology for not a lot of cost. Let's assume it covers all the customers also. Yes. Privacy of customers in what sense? So that they'll anyway know because they have your purchase orders. Similar to Amazon or similar bookstores, right? They already know what you're purchasing. Yes. Assistance to customers in what sense? Okay. Okay. Okay, so the question is, let's say if there is something which you're not able to find, right? Again, I've seen some videos where people take their phones, they search for something and you get directions, right? You get AR, VR, like directions there. So I want all of you to think beyond technology. Yes. Yes, that's true, but that's a very, so in first world countries, you'll just assume it's a given. Yes. Why not? Okay. So let's again make more assumptions. Let's assume the technology is solved. You have 4G, 5G, you have Wi-Fi in the store, whatever. Like you have technology is solved. What could be some of the challenges? Again, think beyond technology. Yes. Electricity, assume that you have huge solar plants and electricity is free for you. So again, technology is solved. Okay. Okay, so there might be some resistance to shifting to new things, but just look at the way people have now shifted to UPI-based payments. It's been very good in India. Yes. Okay. With the cashier, with the okay. So you'll miss those interactions. Yes, that's one valid point. Yes. Why do you think so? Okay, so he's saying that there could be social cues to make you spend more, perhaps. Yes. 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 So that's what I was trying to come to. Let's think about the problem not just from the technology perspective, but let's from ethics perspective, from the social perspective. You have millions of people around the world who are working in such stores. Do you suddenly just remove them from their jobs? Why? Because they don't know how to write TensorFlow and PyTorch. Is it a valid statement? But we need to think about this as we're moving towards increasingly technology-enabled solutions. What happens to humans who are not skilled in this particular way? Not to say that the skills are less useful, but they're not skilled in this particular way. We need to think about that, right? What happens to those? The other thing which I wanted to mention about this technology was that this is, again, a system. This is not just machine learning. You have sensors, you have varieties of computer vision algorithms, you have a bunch of things happening under the hood, right? There may be perhaps some heuristics also. And all of this comes together to finally deliver a solution. It's not just that you write some machine learning code and you're done, right? So think about everything as a solution. Let's look at another different application. Any questions till this point of time? Okay, let's look at the next video.
Billion people are estimated to live in poverty around the world. That's a billion people living on less than $2 a day. Poverty reduction is one goal that almost everyone can agree on. Last year's United Nations Sustainable Development Goals set 169 separate development targets to be met by the year 2030, with poverty reduction as a principal goal. But how do we actually track progress towards these goals? Right now, our ambitions exceed our capabilities. Most countries don't collect much data, and scaling up traditional household survey-based data collection efforts will be expensive. What if less conventional data sources could help shed light on these development outcomes? That's what our project does. We combine high-resolution satellite imagery with powerful machine learning algorithms to predict how rich or poor specific locations around the world are. But standard machine learning approaches to interpreting imagery work best when they have lots of data. Think millions of labeled images. Unfortunately, there are few places in the world where we can tell the computer with certainty whether the people living there are rich or poor. Our solution is to combine high-resolution daytime imagery with images of the Earth at night. Places that are brighter at night are usually more developed. We use this nightlight data to help us find features in the higher resolution daytime imagery that are correlated with economic development. Without being told what to look for, our machine learning algorithm learns to pick out many things that are easily recognizable, such as roads, urban areas, waterways, and farmland. These features summarize the huge amount of information in each satellite image. The final step is to use these features to predict village-level wealth as measured in surveys. We do this in 5 African countries: Uganda, Tanzania, Nigeria, Malawi, and Rwanda. We find that our method does a good job predicting the distribution of poverty. In fact, a better job than any existing approach that we know of. Since it's cheap and scalable, requiring only satellite images, it could be used to map poverty around the world, helping aid organizations to distribute funds more efficiently and policymakers to enact and evaluate policies more effectively.
Okay, so this solution was showing how we can get an estimate of the poverty or the income levels of different countries. Now, one word which I particularly liked in this video was scalable. Right? So this is another key takeaway which I want all of you to think about. We generally want to use machine learning systems to help us scale, right? Scale up prediction. Now, we could have gone to villages. We could have done the survey, like India does a census. But how often does the census happen in India? Does anyone remember? 5 years, 10 years, 10 years typically, right? And in 10 years, you get a very different picture, right? So think of it as you want a dynamic snapshot of the poverty or the income levels. You clearly have to have some sensing capabilities which are at a much higher resolution. You can't have people going at every 10 years and doing that, right? So therefore, you end up using such satellite-based systems, right? But think of the drawbacks. Where do you think such technology might fail? Sorry. In festivals like Diwali, okay, so you will have much more light data, at least from the subcontinent. Yes. Yes. Excellent. So think of it as this approach is dependent on the resolution of the satellite, right? And the satellite may not give you very fine-grained resolution. Of course, there may be privacy concerns also. Otherwise, the satellite, you don't want a satellite peeping at your smartwatch, right? So you want satellites to be looking at from a sufficiently far distance, which means that each satellite image, each satellite pixel that you're getting from the satellite imagery will cover a reasonably large area. And as he was mentioning, in certain parts of the world, let's say in Mumbai, you have slums and very high-rise buildings very close to each other, adjacent to each other. Right? So what do you now predict? So such technologies will fail there. Another key takeaway, which I thought was important, was the mentioning things like nightlight data. Right? Now you need to have certain amount of domain expertise when you're thinking about the machine learning system, and not just think of, oh, I got this data set publicly, and let me just use my sophisticated deep learning algorithm and let me just output something. Right? Getting this expertise from the domains, understanding the problem is an integral component. Right? Let's look at another application now.
Billion people.
So as a toddler, I never liked talking on the phone, especially when my parents would suddenly call and tell me to talk to some relative, right? And the relative on the other side would ask, tell me who I am. So I don't remember. As a toddler, you generally don't remember such names, right? And it's an embarrassing situation for toddlers, right? So let's see if technology can help us. You might have seen this video already from Sundar Pichai, but let's quickly watch it again.
To make your haircut appointment on Tuesday between 10 and noon. What happens is the Google Assistant makes the call seamlessly in the background for you. So what you're going to hear is the Google Assistant actually calling a real salon to schedule the appointment for you. Let's listen.
So how can I help you? Hi, I'm calling to book a women's haircut for a client. I'm looking for something on May 3rd. Sure, give me 1 second. Sure, what time are you looking for around? At 12 p.m. We do not have a 12 p.m. available. The closest we have to that is a 1:15. Do you have anything between 10 a.m. and 12 p.m.? Depending on what service she would like. What service is she looking for? Just a woman's haircut for now. Okay, we have a 10 o'clock. 10 a.m. is fine. Okay, what's her first name? The first name is Lisa. Okay, perfect. So I will see Lisa at 10 o'clock on May 3rd. Okay, great. Thanks. Great. Have a great day. Bye.
Very cool technology demo. So what do you think about this technology? Would you be worried about this technology? Would you like this technology? Does it help you? Yes. Why would you be worried about such a technology? Yes. Yes. Okay. Yes. So the answer from the audience is that in this particular video, we saw that the assistant is trying to book for 10 a.m. something between 10 a.m. and 1 p.m. But the person who wants to get a haircut might not be free. Again, I'm thinking of this more as a technological problem which is solvable, where the calendar could be looked at. Right? So perhaps it's solvable that way. But what else would you be worried about with such? Yes. Somebody? Right. So prank calls. So how many of you get calls from, let's say, telemarketers, banks, and phone operators? to shift to their services, to take their credit cards, to get their health insurance. Currently, many of such organizations have human beings on the desk, right? They have to pay for those human beings. It's expensive to pay for human beings. If you have such technologies, think of the amount of spam calls you can get potentially, right? You can just scale up. So we were talking about the word scaling, right? You can scale up spam calling. So that would be very worrisome if you get that. What could be your other concerns? Yes. Okay, so the answer is that the assistant may not be able to understand the conversation. So that's to do with the ambiguity of natural language. That's to do with the ambiguity of, let's say if I have something in my head, right? On my calendar, I've said that I am free from 10 to 1, right? But I generally, I may not want to get a haircut done right before 1 because that's when I want to have lunch, right? Although my calendar is free, right? So there are some things which you have in your head, which you'll be able to understand, which you'll be able to express, but you may not be able to put it up in your calendar or in words. What could be the other concerns? Yes. Fraud. Yes. So you can again have a certain amount of frauds. You can have jobs being lost, right? So we also have certain customer support systems, right? Let's say if your microwave is not working, you'll call up customer support and they'll tell you something, or they'll book a service request for you. Now, again, imagine if all of that can be automated. You can have the entire FAQ, the frequently asked questions, the entire database being prepared, and you fit a natural language system to look into that and answer the queries. You can effectively take a lot of people out of their jobs suddenly. Again, why? Because they don't know how to write PyTorch, TensorFlow, JAX, things like that, NumPy, right? So it's an important question. I'm not saying that we ditch the technology. I'm not saying that we just take it without thinking much. So I'm saying that let's be aware, at least be aware of such things surrounding the technology. Let's look at another such system now. This is a very different application on saving energy.
Honey.
What's up? Whoa. How did we use that much energy last month?
Hello,
Who are you?
I'm Bidgley, your personal energy advisor the utility company sent me.
How did you get in here?
You downloaded my app. All right. Well, let's see how your energy consumption compares with your neighbors. Yikes.
What do you mean inefficient? We just bought this new refrigerator.
Take it easy, we'll figure this out. Let's see. Looks like your base load is pretty high. You've probably got some big offenders that are pulling power 24/7. Here's a couple of examples.
I thought that you were getting rid of that Xbox.
Yeah, I'm with her. You get rid of this man cave machine, you could reduce your base load by 10%.
Really?
Yeah, and that's just the beginning. Oh, wow. Looks like you guys had a pretty wild weekend, huh?
Wait, here?
Yeah.
No, we were out of town.
Oh, looks like your AC didn't get the memo. Did you forget to turn it off before you left, guys?
That sounds about right.
Well, that made a pretty big dent. It's all good. In the future, I'll send you texts whenever I see a spike like that.
Oh.
I'll even go you one better. With this guy, you can control your thermostat from anywhere.
Bidgley, this is awesome.
I'll save your praise, my friends. I'm just getting warmed up.
So the key idea here is that you want to tell how much energy each appliance is consuming. Now you can install a sensor on each appliance. You can do that. But do you think that's a good idea to measure the energy consumption of each? Why not? Yes. So again, I'm looking for this keyword scalable. It doesn't scale well. Scale in terms of cost. If you have to put a sensor on each appliance, it's going to be costing a lot more. Scalable in terms of, not scalable in terms of maintenance. The sensors will break at some point. It's very hard. So then what do? So instead of having multiple sensors, instead of getting data from multiple places, you just get the data from one sensor, which is your total household energy consumption. Right? You can get that via something known as a smart meter, which is just like your meter, regular electricity meter, but it can just feed the power data at, let's say, minute resolution, right? Now you can use the fact that each appliance will have its own unique signature. For example, a fan will be consuming relatively less power compared to a fridge, compared to an AC. An AC is a thermostatically controlled appliance, right? So the compressor turns on and off after within a certain temperature ranges, right? So you can use all of these facts. Again, you're leveraging domain expertise, right? You're not just blindly using any machine learning model. You're not just using, let's just use neural network, I have some data. Firstly, you figured out that it's time series based data, right? Your power versus time is a time series based data. Secondly, you know that certain appliances have certain operating characteristics which give them unique signatures. You can leverage all of that, right? And then you can give an energy breakdown. You can tell how much each appliance is consuming, and then you can give such feedback to the users. Again, why would you be worried if such technology existed today? I've shown you the upsides of it. This can help you reduce 15% energy. That's what studies suggest. If you know how much each appliance consumes, what could be some downsides to it? Okay, let's go ahead. Yes. The security concerns. But why would you be worried with the electricity data? Okay, so how does that? So let's say if my neighbor knows that I have a 2-ton AC, why should I be worried? Okay, but how do you think knowing about your AC harms you? Oh, you're talking about cyber attacks. Okay. Okay. Yes. Yes. Fortunately, unfortunately, this could be used for marketing purposes. Your data is, they'll figure out that you're using certain appliances. If you are shown certain types of ads, that will change your behavior, right? You'll be shown ads on. It seems that the energy consumption of air conditioners is very high. If you move to a certain kinds of an air conditioner, you can save X amount of money. It's advertisement. Yes, there was another answer here. Yes. Yes, excellent. So this can, so energy consumption is very directly tied to your personal behavior, right? So especially for appliances like, let's say, lights or television, right? So I can figure out your daily routines, and then I can be a thief, right? So we're thinking like a thief throughout this discussion. I can be a thief. I can figure out when you're not at home. That's a good time to come and just steal whatever I want, right? I can also figure out that when you're gone for a holiday, right? Your electricity consumption is low for an extended period. It's a good time to come and steal. Again, I'm not suggesting you do. I'm just telling you that we need to be thinking about all these concerns, right? So when we think about this particular aspect of privacy, that's where things like differential privacy or privacy preserving machine learning comes into play, right? When we're thinking about the example for Amazon Go stores when we're discussing, then we think about things like computer vision also. We think about things like adversarial learning, how to prevent adversarial attacks. We're thinking about the entire system, right? We're thinking about the domain expertise, and we're thinking about scaling, right? I want you to keep thinking about these 4 or 5 different facets throughout this talk and throughout this summer school. Let's come to one of the favorite applications. Everyone has heard about self-driving cars. So very cool technology. So So all of you just think that you didn't see the next slide, right? So what do you think could be some downsides of such technology? Yes. Yes. Okay. So the audience answer is that such systems may or may not be able to save the person sitting at the back. So let me pose a philosophical question to you. You might have heard of this question before. Let's say you're sitting in this self-driving car, very expensive car. Now your car is going at a high speed. There are 3 people coming in from who are trying to cross the road, right? So a husband, wife, and their young child, right? So 3-year-old child. They're trying to walk through the crossway, and your car is going at a very high speed. Now you have only 2 options. One, like the self-driving car has only 2 options. One, it kills those 3 people, including the 3-year-old child. Second, it swerves at a very high speed to the left, which means that the car gets damaged and the passenger most likely gets killed. What does the self-driving car do? And why? And the person sitting in the car is an 80-year-old person, retired, just very relaxed person. Yes. Okay.
Then the car should be supposed to go and probably hit those people, because it's not the AI's or the people who's driving mistake, it's the people who are crossing the road.
Okay.
Ethically.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I think.
Okay, so one answer from the audience is that the law should be followed, but again, the law is open for interpretation. There are various ways in which law is being applied, and in certain countries, in fact, the people who are driving the cars, they're generally very afraid of the pedestrians. The pedestrians always get the first chance to go. In certain countries, like in the subcontinent, it's generally the other way around. Like you'll have to be a sprinter in order to cross the road at many places. Yes, what do you think? Yes, yes.
So regardless how fast the car was going, the car will have to swerve and damage itself.
Okay.
Most likely.
Okay.
Because regardless of whether you're jaywalking or not.
Yes.
Pedestrians have the right to do it.
Yes. So pedestrians have the first right to cross. So in that case, the AI should kill, but you paid this fancy company 1 crore rupees to buy this car to kill you. Did you pay that? No, right? So there are no good answers. There's no correct answer here. I just wanted to bring this question up, that when we again think of such machine learning basis, AI based systems, we have to think of other questions also, regulations also. I'm not saying that we, as in we who's developing the technology, need to know all the answers, but it's something we should be aware of. So one certain aspect of this is, can you bring certain uncertainty in your estimations when you're predicting machine learning systems? So sometimes when such accidents occur is because the machine learning confidently thinks that this person, like say, so the machine learning system may very confidently think that this is a bicycle, right? But if you had a certain notion of uncertainty, you could have warned the driver, right? I'm not sure. The machine says, I'm not sure. You take control, right? And that's where also the understanding of the capabilities of the autonomous system is the reason why certain accidents have occurred. So in the past, without naming any companies, one person once had an accident in an autonomous car. So the problem was that the car was not autonomous, it was assisted driving. So there's a difference between assisted driving and autonomous driving. Assisted is that, so the rule book said that the driver has to be always present in the car seat, in the driver's seat, and has to be very accessible, has to be very close to the steering wheel, right? But the driver didn't understand this and had just completely left the steering wheel, and there was an accident, right? So understanding this technology is also very important, right? What else could be worrisome for such technologies? Yes. Your daily routine is now up for grabs, which is a commonly occurring problem you would have seen, right? Right through these systems, your data gets exposed. Yes. Yes, good. Yeah. Who's responsible? It's not clear. So have some of you now seen that certain Uber, Ola drivers now place smartphones on their dashboards, right? They are continuously streaming now. Some of you might have seen videos of passengers who are behaving rudely, and they are now on social media, right? So certain Uber, Ola, similar company drivers have taken to this course, right, of actually capturing some evidence. Let's go on to another very important application.
This area is known as Stewart's Landing, and this is Dancing Crow Farm.
One of the world's problems is yield. How do you double the yield by 2050 to feed the growth of the population in the world? This is a project that we recently started. What we want to do is we want to enable data-driven farming. The first goal is to give a real-time view of the farm, the real-time pulse of the farm to the farmer, saying, hey, this is what your farm is doing right now. So how do you even connect these farms to the internet? It's so far remote, the cell carriers have very little incentive to provide connectivity in the farms.
The system that we have deployed here is measuring soil temperature and moisture, and it's coming from this sensor.
Here what you see is a white spaces device. The idea that we had was a farmer buys a white space router, plug it in the farm, and your entire farm is connected. Now you can connect multiple devices, and connectivity is cheap. So you can actually deploy many more sensors in the farm. You could have a dense deployment of sensors getting real-time view of all the parts of the farm. Not only your soil or moisture data, but this is a high bandwidth connection. You can connect cameras, get real-time views from the farm. So once you have all this data, you could then analyze the data to predict what the future would look like.
I'm actually really looking forward to how the process will change. This last year has been mainly a data gathering, information collecting year for the Microsoft research team. I'm really looking forward to seeing what research they've gathered this year, putting that together with what I think is going to happen next year, and make predictions for what I should plant when and where.
So another cool application. All of us, I believe, now agree that this is an important problem. The yield has to be improved. And we've also seen that the problem of the farmers in India is a big problem, right? So the idea suggested in this particular project from Microsoft Research is that can you place certain amount of sensors in the farm, which get a sense of the amount of moisture, if there are weeds or if there is any problem occurring in the farm, and you get a snapshot of it, right? Now, as I mentioned earlier, I wanted to think of this entire thing, the machine learning or the data science system, as a part of the whole, and not the system, and not just think about the machine learning system. So did anyone of you pay attention to when they mentioned this white space devices, right? So what do you think of white space devices? Why did they need a white space device? Why not use 3G, 4G, 5G, 6G, whatever G? You have connectivity issues in rural areas. You can't put a cell tower everywhere, right? So you can collect all the data in the world. You can have as sophisticated algorithms that you have, but if you're not able to transmit that data, what do you do with it? Right? So in this case, they use a white spaces devices. So how many of you have adjusted the TV antenna? Anyone young, anyone old enough to have done that? Yes. So you have your sibling or you have someone on the ground floor or 1 or 2 floors below, and you're shouting, is it working or not working? And you're adjusting the antenna, right? And sometimes you would have seen that when you're scrolling between the different channels on the TV, you see those noise things, you see those gray dots, right? And you hear that hiss sound. Similarly, when you hear the sound, when you're tuning in between the different channels, anyone here still uses the radio? Yes, very few people. Like you get Spotify, you have songs on demand. Maybe radio is not that popular now, but if you're tuning in between, you're moving between the different frequencies, there is a point where you hear a lot of noise, right? It's a white space. It's an empty space between two frequency bands, right? So I'm telling you all this just so that again, you're aware of that the data science has to be part of the whole system. So in this case, they leverage the frequency gap in the TV spectrum, right? There are certain channels which are not any longer present. Can you use that spectrum and send the data over it? So this was the whole idea behind this project. Let's go on to the next project now. This is fairly similar to what we also do in our lab.
So my aunt has congestive heart disease, and recently she was rushed to the hospital. Luckily, she survived, but chronic diseases don't happen overnight, and problems with them happen cumulatively. So if our homes actually monitor health, particularly for chronic disease patients, we can avoid many of these hospitalizations. Now the question is, how do you monitor health at home? Unfortunately, the picture today is not very lovely. If you want to monitor breathing, you need nasal probe or chest band, heartbeats, pulse oximeter. Motion for Parkinson patients, you have to ask them to wear all of these sensors on their body. Falls is something on their neck. And sleep, you have to ask them to put all of these electrodes on their heads and sleep with it. What if somebody comes and tells you that we can monitor all of those things in the home without asking the patient to wear any sensor on their body? That's exactly what I do in my group. We invented smart Wi-Fi box that uses the wireless signals around you to monitor your breathing, your heartbeat, your gait, falls, even sleep, and all of that without putting any sensor on the body. Now you might be surprised, but actually, you guys are sitting here, you are in a sea of wireless signals, Wi-Fi, cellular, everything. And every move that you do, you lift your arm like this, it changes the electromagnetic fields. And those changes, actually, we analyze them with AI algorithms in our box. And we know you lifted your arm, you took a breath, or this is your heartbeat, and without any sensors on your body. Let me show you a video of this. This is a home, and the wireless signals spread in the home. And actually, they reflect off our bodies and come back to our smart Wi-Fi.
Does anyone know what happened? Yes. Any clues on what happened? Probably the streaming from a laptop to this device to the something in between stopped. No, the video stopped actually. Okay. Yeah, I was wondering if that was the issue. But it was interesting because we were talking about Wi-Fi and similar things that this thing happened, but it didn't happen. So how many of you think we are doing an experiment on you right away, right now? We also have a bunch of routers. Are we counting at what rate each of you are breathing? Yes, no? How many think we are? No, actually we're not. But just think of it. Could we have done that? Probably. Could we have done that and then given that information to your insurance provider, who will not give you good insurance value now because your health is not optimal, right? But this is a very, very cool technology. The basic idea is that each of your movement causes a different reflection in your of the sent wave, right? So let's say if I'm sending a wave through this device, it will get bounced off from each of you, and it's sensitive enough to even measure your chest wall movement, which tells you about your breathing rate, right? It can, so if you take this to the extreme, I can even tell what you're typing on your keyboard based on what you're, of course I can't, but people who've done this work can. Yes, the question. How do you identify different people? So a lot of this technology has been generally demonstrated in very few people, setting 1 or 2 people. But then you can again build biometrics for each person. Like, so each person will reflect these waves in a different fashion. So, and sometimes when they build up such prototypes, they have multiple receivers and multiple transmitters. That just makes the problem slightly easier. But if a single receiver, single transmitter, perhaps one or two people recognition should be feasible inside a home like setting, right? But if we again think back on why we're using ML here, because the current systems are not scalable, they're cumbersome, they're expensive, they require a lot of instrumentation, right? So you're saying that I can repurpose existing hardware inside your home to be able to measure your vital signs, right? That's a common theme that you'll see across a host of machine learning applications. How can you make the problem simple? How can you make it easier to estimate some quantity? Whenever you're talking about estimation, you'll have the estimation with reduced accuracy, right? But that comes at a cost. So again, think of Apple Watch or Google wearable Fitbit like devices, right? Now these can measure your various health parameters. They can measure fall detection, etc., at a continuous level, right? You can't do that with other systems. Right? You won't wear the sensors throughout the day, right? But Apple Watch or similar systems, you'll probably wear. That's the whole idea behind such systems. You're trying to monitor certain things continuously, or continually rather. Any questions, comments till now? Okay, let's go ahead then. So some of us might have seen this auto reply feature from Google. I was actually present at the conference in which this paper was being presented in 2016. So it's now about 6 years ago. It's a very cool feature, right? You're on the go, you're moving, and you get 3 options. You can quickly reply. Right? Now, actually, I can also now, with a fair degree of confidence, say that if someone has replied to me via this auto suggest, or they have actually taken the pain to reply, like without the auto reply, because the answers are very cliched, right? You can basically figure it out. What do you think could be the upside and the downside of such technology? First, let's talk about upside. Why is this a good technology? Saves your time. You're on the move, right? You're walking. It's hard to type, right? In fact, there's been some research on modifying the inbuilt keyboard so that they're also more walking friendly. Although that's taking it to a different level. You don't want to be having accidents while walking, but it saves time, right? So we agree that it saves time. What could be some downsides to it? Reduces communication skills, right? Why do you say it reduces communication skills? Right. So how many of us have seen the older generation or 1 or 2 generations above going to functions, parties, weddings with either a paper map or on the phone they've called the person whose wedding function, etc. it is. They figured out this is the vicinity, this is certain radius. They know certain roads. They'll go, they'll take the car, and then they'll keep on asking people, and they'll finally reach the destination. How many of you have done that? I've seen that. How many of you would be comfortable doing that on your own now? Okay, only 1 person is comfortable. Seems like an adventurous person, but why do you think you'll want to do that? You have Google Maps, right? But has anyone taken Google Maps and landed in the middle of a ditch? Landed at very stupid places, very dangerous looking roads, right? I was in fact at the zoo yesterday, and I was told to go at a completely wrong place. Like, it's not completely wrong. It was about 2-3 kilometers from the gate, and I had to actually ask people around, right? But think of a generation of people who don't need to use communication skills, who don't need to ask for help, right? They can just ask the machine to do that, right? Think of this. If you take this to the extreme, do you think you'll have? Okay, so how many of you have seen? I've seen with my family. Like, if I have to get something done, what is the first mode that I prefer? First mode is generally to write an email, right? Doesn't work, then maybe WhatsApp like thing. Doesn't work, then maybe a phone call. Doesn't work, then maybe visit the person and visit the person in person, right? But again, have you seen some certain older generations, maybe they just directly call the person? So it seems very socially awkward for us to do that, right? Why do you want to call someone, right? But again, think of this as again, I'm not going into any philosophical debate. I'm just saying that just think of certain skills being, if not being practiced enough, what can happen to them, right? I also heard of a story where of a certain study where certain pilots, they had lost the ability to land planes without the autopilot when they were given certain challenging situations. One generation before, they think when the autopilots were not as sophisticated, they would have landed them properly. So I don't want you to be thinking about this when you take your flight back, but just be aware of the downsides of always using auto reply. Another aspect of this is, now let's say if you're given these three options, you're very likely to just use these three because these are the path of least resistance, right? Does that reduce the diversity in your responses? Probably. Could you have thought of something else if not given these three options? Probably. So again, being aware of such technological things, but otherwise it's a very, very cool technology to be able to do this at scale, to build an application which does this in real time, right? It's a very, very cool piece of technology. Yes. Over. So the question from the audience is, don't you think it would be better if we had a recommendation? So what would a recommendation engine reply here?
Hello. Yeah. So like currently we can see right now also, like whenever we are typing some email, it will give some auto completion features,
Yes.
right? So that's better because we are aware about what we are doing.
Okay.
One of the issues with auto reply is, even if the system did some auto reply to a particular context, we are unaware about it.
Okay.
So
Okay.
for example, you send some meeting request and then my system probably just approved it, and if I'm unaware about it,
Yes.
so it's a big deal because it's causing some human traction between different users. So instead of that, I believe that recommendation systems or auto completion as an alternative is a better option.
Yep. So again, all of this is up for debate. There are no correct answers here. It's up to the, so that's why these are questions we are discussing, right? There's no silver bullet here. I don't know the correct answer. No one knows the correct answer, but these are good questions to at least think of, right? And if unfortunately I'm appearing pessimistic, then this particular slide will make you even more pessimistic, unfortunately. Lee Sedol, how many of you heard of this person, Lee Sedol? Anyone? Okay, quite a few have. You've heard of maybe this computer system from Google DeepMind called AlphaGo, right? It's a traditional game, Eastern tradition game, similar or much more sophisticated than chess. Lee Sedol was the world #1, and he lost to AlphaGo when this machine learning system was. It was a very big deal because this is considered a very, very sophisticated game. So computers have been playing chess very well since mid-1990s, but this is a much more sophisticated game, right? So world #1, what do you think this world #1 is currently doing? Let's just open the Wikipedia page and see if we get something. So let's just read this particular line. 19th November 2019, announced retirement from professional play, stating could never be the top overall player due to the increasing dominance of AI. And refer to them as an entity that cannot be defeated. Right. So you don't want to be in such situations where your professional careers are being ended, right? How many of us would have liked if, let's say, Sachin Tendulkar, Roger Federer, or Rafael Nadal, or Djokovic, or Tiger Woods, or anyone retired early because AI was very dominant, right? Ronaldo, Messi, right? So there's a funny story to this whole video, this particular slide that I'm showing. So during this COVID pandemic, there were a bunch of studies which were supposedly very accurate in detecting COVID, right? Given a chest X-ray-like images, they could tell whether pneumonia, COVID, whatever it is, right? So there was one particular study which looked at existing research. They pointed out that for detecting COVID, many of such images were particularly looking at one small area in the image, which was the most useful feature. What do you think that is to detect COVID? Sorry? No, so this is, the whole thing is the lungs. What part of the lung do you think will be most useful in detecting COVID in those studies? I'm not telling whether this is medically correct or not. Or the severity of COVID. Yes. The percentage of infection in the lungs, maybe that's, so you're suggesting that maybe this particular region, some particular small region. Yes. What other region could it be? Yes, so what region is that? So many of you may not be biology students, but maybe just look at this image and guess. Yes. Sorry? The heart. Okay. So someone says the heart, someone says top of lung, someone says beneath the lungs. Any other guesses? The alveoli. Okay. Very nice. Upper right part. Very nice. All of these are very good answers. Yes. The entrance to the lungs, maybe the upper trachea or whatever, right? So it's a respiratory disease. Like all of these answers seem to make sense. The observation in that study was the most important feature was, let's say at this point or this point, where the name of the laboratory is written, where this X-ray was done. Why do you think that happened? Because only the cases which were very serious were sent to this particular laboratory, right? And the other cases were sent to maybe some smaller laboratory, right? So that laboratory name ended up being the most important feature. This is why we need to also think about explainability in machine learning, right? Can the machine learning system be explained? It was giving very high accuracy, right? So another thing, we should not be taking the numbers, the accuracy numbers, 99.95 or those numbers just on the surface. We should be thinking about what it is relative to the baseline that you can develop, right? And in certain cases like this, explainability is very, very important. I will just show this very cool application also. So anyone here who is working on LaTeX and you remember certain mathematical symbol, but you don't remember the name of it in LaTeX, you can just draw this in this web service and it will give you what is this particular symbol, right? Very, very useful application. Currently there's a cricket match going on between India and England. The coach of the Indian men cricket team is currently the player who is here, who is batting, Rahul Dravid. I remember this as a student in class 8th or 9th watching this iconic test match. So the reason I'm actually building these stories is so that you have a better retention. That's why, in fact, I was also trying to tell that I was trying to persuade you through that philosophical question of the car driving 3-year-old, 80-year-old, right? Just to bring in some emotion that you may think that 3-year-old, just started their life, maybe they should be saved, right? But then that doesn't help answer that question perfectly. So machine learning systems can now identify images. They can identify the content in those images. So you can then even build chatbots like the following. You give in a certain image, you can ask questions. What is the mustache made of? In the system, it's bananas, right? So think of it as if you're trying to navigate around a city, right? You point your camera to a certain thing. Things like Google Lens, right? They can now identify parts of the photo. They can tell you where you are. They can help you localize. They can look at this entire system and tell you you're probably at IIT Gandhinagar. Or I think a shopper's paradise is, and my family agrees with this. A shopper's paradise is, I think Google Lens allows this. You take a snap of someone's dress, right? They can give you Amazon links for it, right? So it's a paradise for some people. But we've already seen the downsides. We have seen things like self-driving car crashes. We have seen, can we trust AI in certain situations, right? And biases exist in machine learning, right? Now, this is an older snapshot. Google has, of course, fixed this now. And so there are certain languages like Turkish, which are gender neutral, right? They don't have a separate pronoun for male and female. So he is a babysitter, gets translated to O bir bebek baki şişi. And apologies for not being able to pronounce it correctly. and she's a doctor gets translated to OB doctor. But when you take this OB bebek waki sisi and you translate it back to English, so this translates to she's a babysitter and OB doctor to he's a doctor. So there is an inherent bias suggesting that babysitters are more likely to be females and doctors are more likely to be males, right? So it's not a very pleasant experience to be on the receiving end of such stereotypes. Fortunately, they have figured this out, and they give very nice gender specific translations, right? So again, we need to be aware of such biases which exist. Now, unfortunately, this person is being tagged as a gorilla, right? So we may have a laugh about it, but let's think that if we were on the receiving end, right? If we are of a certain race, gender, and we are on the receiving end on automated systems just because of certain features, right? That's very unfortunate. Something we need to be aware of. Which one in this image do you think is the bride? Both. Which one do you think the system will generally tend to recognize? So many of you saying right one because you have your own biases, but mostly it will end up being the left one because of the biases which exist, right? Of certain types of brides will be thought of as brides and the other ones perhaps not thought as brides.
Let's play a game.
So let's
close your eyes and picture.
So I want all of you to think, to actually get your notebooks. It's an important exercise. It's a very hard exercise. So let's see who does well in this exercise. And you'll get 10 seconds for it. Maybe 20 seconds, okay.
Let's play a game. Close your eyes and picture a shoe. Okay.
So that's the exercise. Draw a shoe in your notebook. Take 20 seconds, draw a shoe. Many people also recognize that your drawing abilities are out of sync with your typing abilities now. So we've already heard a bunch of stuff about biases, etc. Right? It's just machine learning, right? We are not biased, right? Does everyone agree that we are not biased? We are very unbiased people. We're sophisticated, smart. That's why we're here. Let's complete this exercise now.
Did anyone picture this? This? How about this? We may not even know why, but each of us is biased toward one shoe over the others. Now imagine that you're trying to teach a computer to recognize a shoe. You may end up exposing it to your own bias. That's how bias happens in machine learning. But first, what is machine learning? Well, it's used in a lot of technology we use today. Machine learning helps us get from place to place, gives us suggestions, translates stuff, even understands what you say to it. How does it work? With traditional programming, people hand code the solution to a problem, step by step. With machine learning, computers learn the solution by finding patterns in data. So it's easy to think there's no human bias in that. But just because something is based on data doesn't automatically make it neutral. Even with good intentions, it's impossible to separate ourselves from our own human biases. So our human biases become part of the technology we create in many different ways. There's interaction bias, like this recent game, where people were asked to draw shoes for the computer. Most people drew ones like this. So as more people interacted with the game, the computer didn't even recognize these. Latent bias. For example, if you were training a computer on what a physicist looks like, and you're using pictures of past physicists, your algorithm will end up with a latent bias, skewing towards men. And selection bias. Say you're training a model to recognize faces. Whether you grab images from the internet or your own photo library, are you making sure to select photos that represent everyone? Since some of our most advanced products use machine learning, we've been working to prevent that technology from perpetuating negative human bias. From tackling offensive or clearly misleading information from appearing at the top of your search results page, to adding a feedback tool on the search bar so people can flag hateful or inappropriate autocomplete suggestions. It's a complex issue and there's no magic bullet. But it starts with all of us being aware of it so we can all be part of the conversation. Because technology should work for everyone.
And the last line was a very important line. Technology should work for everyone. And they've clearly shown, I'm now hoping that many of you have seen that we are also biased in certain ways to think in certain ways. Let's now watch this former president. Does everyone know that this is Barack Obama?
It got me thinking about my full-time employees and their ability to survive on $8 an hour in New York City. And foremost in all of our minds has been the loss and the grief felt by the people of Orlando. Most of us don't get our health care through the marketplace. We get it through our job or through Medicare or Medicare. And what you should know is that thanks to the Affordable Care Act, your coverage is better today than it was before. Women can get free checkups, and you can't get charged more just for being a woman. To give his employees come together to pass a common, there's a bill that would boost America in very, very hard times.
Some progress, at least within the small confines of the legal community. I think it's real important.
Here we go. President Barack Obama, when you're giving a speech, make sure you use a lot of pauses.
America's businesses have created 14.5 million new jobs over 7.
So, unfortunately, this video comes at the backdrop of a lot of political things happening in India. Now, imagine if such things existed right, and such videos were circulated right before the elections of a major, let's say, major leader of the national parties. Imagine the amount of chaos, the amount of riots it can create, right? But so they're showing here that this took only 14 hours of videos and a bunch of powerful GPU systems. But does this mean that we will be using such technologies only for the wrong purposes? No, I know of certain organizations who are into creating books for children, right? Now, there are beautiful books for children which exist for, let's say, which have been printed for the US children, right? Now, let's say if they have to create similar books for India, firstly, they'll have to change the names so that they're more culturally appropriate names, but maybe even the dressing. Or maybe if you go to the Middle East or you go to certain other parts of the world. So the children have to find the illustrations more relatable to them, right? How do you do that? One, you can hire a lot of illustrators who redo all the illustrations. Very hard. Or you can do certain things like in machine learning, this is either use style transfer or similar technologies, fairly similar to the technology being used in this video, so that you can create more culturally balanced illustrations for children's book. They can connect more to them, right? So you can use such technology for both varieties of things. When I mentioned adversaries or adversarial machine learning, this is what I meant. So the computer vision or the machine learning system recognizes the left image as a panda, right? You added some imperceptible noise, human imperceptible noise to it. So this image and the left image, they both look exactly the same to us, right? But this is predicted as a gibbon with a very high confidence, right? So imagine if you are you're using a self-driving car, right? And you have a speed sign which says that the speed, or it's a dead end, right? It's a sign saying dead end, and someone has added certain noise to it, right? Some adversarial noise to it, and that gets predicted as the speed limit is 80. What happens? To think about certain situations. So what is machine learning would be discussed in much more detail by Ashish in the next lecture. I just wanted to show that one such definition, which is in Tom Mitchell's book. So we're looking at terms like computer program is learning from experience with respect to tasks and performance measure P, right? So all of these terms are important. We need to think about the task at hand, the performance measure, what kind of metrics you want to use, right? And how do you learn with experience? So that's all I had for this particular slide, for this particular session. I am open for questions now. I hope that I've not given you an overly pessimistic view. I just wanted to take a balanced view and think of the additional challenges which now exist, right? But if I just want to summarize some of the key takeaways, one, we need to think of machine learning as a part of the system, right? Or data science is the part of the system. We saw this in data science for farm. We saw this in machine learning for healthcare, right? We see that it's a part of the system. Second, we need to think about the ethics of the whole system, and rather than just thinking about the immediate technology directly being deployed. Third, whenever we're talking about machine learning, we're generally thinking about how can we scale the predictions? How can we make it, how can we create a system which is easier than before? Right. So these are three main key takeaways I would like you to think about from this talk. Yes, I'm open for questions and questions from the remote audience also. Okay.
From the remote audience, is there a way to guess whether a video is deep fake or not?
Okay, so that's a very good question. Is there a way to estimate if a video is deep fake or not? I believe there are such technologies which exist at this point of time. So it's a cat and mouse game going on, right? And a lot of machine learning researchers who are building such technologies. So think of it as you have two kinds of hackers, right? One is let's say call them bad hackers and good hackers, or ethical hackers. Ethical hackers also hack into the systems, right? But for what? For finding out the security loopholes, and then they close those loopholes. Similarly, there is a bunch of, or there are a significant amount of researchers who are looking into such systems, adversarial systems, or creating such deepfake systems to understand where these can be patched. And therefore, there exist systems which can perhaps detect. I am not very aware of such of this literature, to be honest, to be able to directly give you references, but perhaps the later speakers will. Yes, other questions? Yes. Yes. Yeah. So I think a lot of companies who are building such self-driving systems would take this into account. So the biggest loss is indeed for these companies. They have one such accident, and unfortunately, if they think only in terms of stock prices, they will crash. The stocks will just crash. The company will lose a lot of valuation. No one will want to buy their car. They will face litigations. There'll be a lot of issues, right? So they do think about such issues. That's what I think. But such issues are impossible to, you can't think of each and every scenario, right? So I've also heard of such self-driving car systems which work perfectly, but one such car had an accident because that was a particularly, I think it was a rainy day, or it was a day in which the shadow the shadow of the clouds was occurring in a slightly different way than what you would expect. So the car got confused. It's humanly impossible. It's impossible to cover all possible scenarios. Yes, other questions?
Okay, so one common recurring theme I found across all consumer-facing applications of ML is that you have to give it a lot of data, a lot of personal data. So how do you think going forward we can make ML private, respect the privacy of every individual, or
Yes.
are we looking at a more dystopian future where companies have a lot more data than they already do?
Yes, so that's an excellent question. That companies do need data, right? Without data, you can't build very sophisticated models. Many sophisticated models require a lot of data. So that's where this whole field of privacy preserving machine learning comes in. So you don't send your data as it is. You send your data in such a way that none of your private characteristics or sensitive attributes can be figured out. I'll not answer this a lot because I believe there are certain talks, there may be a couple of talks which will touch upon this aspect in much more detail. But that's the whole idea, that there are various ways to solve this problem. One of them is, can you send the data to the server in such a way that none of the sensitive attributes can be recovered? Or think of it as anonymization, or anybody want to answer this question? Or later? Okay.
So there's another question from the remote audience. Chaitanya is asking, what is the difference between machine learning and deep learning?
Okay. I believe Ashish might touch upon this, but I'll just answer this quickly. Think of AI as so you're thinking about Venn diagram, right? So let's think about artificial intelligence as the biggest set, not the biggest in this context, as a big set. It includes things like machine learning. It includes things like logic-based programming. It includes things like computer vision, robotics, AR, VR, etc. So let's just think of that as the big superset, artificial intelligence. Machine learning is, in general, when we are trying to solve such machine learning, like when we have this prediction problems, so we had a definition for machine learning, right? So let's call this specific aspect machine learning. Deep learning is a subset of machine learning where we're using neural networks, specifically deep neural networks, right? So there are a bunch of machine learning algorithms, let's say linear regression, logistic regression, and let's say decision trees, random forest, support vector machines. All of these are machine learning algorithms. These are supervised machine learning algorithms. There are other kinds of machine learning algorithms. Deep learning is one specific branch of algorithms within machine learning, right? So AI is the broadest, machine learning, then you go on to deep learning. Yes. Other questions?
If there's nothing here, I'll put in one more question from the, I'm releasing sets. So how effective has AI/ML been in predicting seemingly random processes such as stock market prices?
Okay, so you'll see a lot of papers on, I think you'll see, unfortunately, you'll see prices, you'll see things on predicting stock market. I am not aware of something which is very good. And I think if there is such system, people will not make it public. Why should they make it public if they can? But in general, so again, this is a question, philosophical question. So such things are generally modeled in machine learning things as random processes, but it's not random. Like you'll need to know all the information possible and encode it in a way that if you had access to each and every possible information, each and every bit, you may be able to predict it correctly, right? You can predict, so you can figure out the growth of a plant, right? If you knew each and every phenomena, you could model it as a physical process, but we don't know that. We don't know the complete physical process. I don't have a good answer on this, on whether this is possible or not. Yes. Okay, so the question is how many assumptions should we make to keep the scenario real? I think this is where the notion of domain expertise comes in. I think there should be some consultations with the domain experts as to what constitutes a physical model, what kind of features or assumptions will make the problem realistic. But speaking from a practical perspective, when you're just thinking as a data scientist, it's generally helpful to start with a lot of assumptions and try and solve the problem when you make when you make a lot of assumptions, when you've simplified the problem a lot. If you cannot solve the problem when you're making a lot of assumptions, you will probably not be able to solve when you're making more assumptions, right? So try and solve the simplest problem first. And that's where also the philosophy comes in. Try and use simpler models first, right? So there's a tendency to build some sophisticated neural network, etc. But what if the data is indeed linearly separable? You could just use a simple algorithm like decision trees or logistic regression. Start off with simple and then gradually add in the complexity. That's what I'd recommend. But talking to domain experts is fairly important. They will help you calibrate as to what is the right amount of expectation for the model. Yes. Yes, go ahead. So, okay. Yes. So the question is, do you believe that certain areas of ML, certain applications of ML, etc., should be restricted, classified, etc.? So I'll attempt to not answer questions which start with "do you believe," because my beliefs they don't have any importance here, right? So I've exposed the risks of doing this, right? I think the policymakers, the lawmakers, the technologies, the whole academic community, they all need to collectively work on this. Unfortunately, it's a very loaded question on do you believe what can be done? My beliefs have no value there. But we need to be aware of the downsides of plainly using technology if we don't think deep enough. Yes, other questions?
So there is one pretty philosophical question on the chat. I don't know how to answer it, so I'll just read it out. Is that do you think that in the applications that we're going to see in the future, is ML enough for human progress, or do we need other things?
Okay. So the question is ML enough for human progress? So I think whenever I hear such questions, I would counter ask that how do you define? Can you objectively define human progress? If you can give me a silver bullet for that, I can then perhaps answer this question. So that's how I think such loaded questions should be answered. There is no simple way. So how do you quantify human progress? Right? It's a very individual to individual description. Do you quantify them on the basis of the life expectancy, or do you quantify them on the basis of happiness index? Each of these measures are imperfect. How do you quantify? How do you measure that? Do you quantify them? So I was yesterday reading a story that the amount of good bacteria in the human gut has reduced, right? So will machine learning do anything there? I don't know. So there are a lot of factors which go in defining such things. Yes. Good questions to which I don't have answers. Yes, any other question? Any other non-philosophical question?
Take a stab at this. So a lot of you have seen that comment by a Google engineer about the general AI having been achieved certain type of transformers. Anybody wants to comment on that? I know that as a company policy, you probably cannot. I'm just kidding.
Yes. I will refuse that I have any knowledge of this question. I can neither confirm nor deny having known this fact. Okay, thank you everyone.